world of work is changing rapidly, and in this podcast, we're examining the challenges and possibilities emerging within this change. We're talking about everything from labor market information to how to enable the thinking and doing that leads to better workforce development and employment outcomes. This is the Workforce Collective podcast. Welcome to the Workforce Collective podcast. I'm Kaleb Meeks, videographer and content creator for Workforce Collective. In today's episode, I'm joined by Godfrey, data analyst and content creator for Workforce Collective, and Natalie Heighway, research assistant for Workforce Collective. We're a group of three youths from NAPEM's Youth Work Experience and Civic Connect's Youth Skills Studio. We'll be discussing youth employment trends, how to attract and retain youth, and the old myth, youth just don't want to work. First of all, Natalie and Justin, thanks for being here today. So let's get started. Justin, you've been analyzing some of our recent survey work. What are some youth trends you've noticed through our gatherings?
Yeah, so we recently conducted a survey over employed youth and unemployed youth in Niagara to try and determine what they view as important for retention and attractiveness in a job. So the most important thing for attractiveness that we found was non-compensation benefits, actually. So things like medical coverage, extra vacation time, and inclusivity was also a really big thing they were looking for. It seems like the youth now are looking for more work-life stability and feeling welcome in their workplace, as opposed to things like wages or promotions.
Okay, I can actually agree with that a lot. Like a safe and healthy workplace. It's not so much about the benefits, but those are pretty good benefits if you ask me.
They are nice to have, yeah.
How do we feel about those things? What were some of them that you listed again?
Yeah, some of the most important things was like inclusivity. So feeling like they can be themselves while they're at work. And I agree with that a lot. I think the ability to express yourself, even as things as like having tattoos, a lot of places didn't do that until recently. They're all really important. Now, of course, there's certain things you need, right? You need wages, you need benefits to be an adult. But if you don't feel welcomed at work, is that a place you're going to stay?
Yeah, definitely. Like from my own personal experience, I've worked at places where I just didn't fit in with the team and instantly looking for somewhere else to be because I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel like I had a voice there or that anything I was doing was just being put down and belittled kind of idea.
Yeah, I've worked at a lot of manual labor jobs throughout my life. And some of them could be a pretty hostile environment. Not so much the way that people are physically with you, but you need to be able to accept all kinds of people. And that doesn't just go to manual labor, it goes towards all places. But that's just an example of my life.
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So I've reviewed our youth employment toolkit, and you can see there that the youth unemployment rate now is lower than 2019, but it's always consistently higher than the general labor force. And why do we think that is?
I had half a thought. I don't know if it's like fully developed or anything, but when I graduated university, I was looking for jobs as a copywriter, content writer, literally anything that had the word writer in it, underwriter even. I was like, what is that? Kind of looking into it. But everything wanted a master's degree and 3 years of experience. And coming straight out of university, like I don't have that 3 years experience. I've just put 5 years into school. And then same with the master's degree. I knew I was burnt out from school. I couldn't do any more. So it just kind of felt like anything in my field or really any field was just got far out of reach, and it was really disheartening. And so I know that I personally took a little bit of, I called it veg time, where I just felt sorry for myself on the couch a little bit, which I guess doesn't really break that you just don't want to work. I did want to work. I really wanted to work. I wanted, the big fancy job that I always kind of imagined. I just didn't have that experience to get my foot in the door. And that's really, really tough when I've been told my entire life to go to school. When I was in high school, you have to go to school if you want a big fancy job. And I wanted the lifestyle that I had growing up. So I knew I needed a good job. But then you're trying to get there yourself and it's just door after door after door is slammed in your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I had a really similar experience when I started looking for work as an adult when I moved to Edmonton. It was really hard to find entry-level work that paid half decently because I didn't have a university degree. I didn't have that 5 or 4 year diploma. So it was a really big challenge to get there. But in addition to that too, I think there's a lot of societal pressure on our generation that we need to go to university, we need to get these degrees. And kind of tied to that is the idea that kind of like you were saying, Kaleb, the trades can be less welcoming. At least people view it that way, even if that's not necessarily true. Kind of just like a collective thought, maybe.
What I always thought was youth are still developing. It may not so much be the fact that we don't want to work, but as you grow older, you start to develop more responsibility. You start to develop more care in your life. And oftentimes, I think people might overlook the fact that a lot of youth are working on their mental health. I'll speak from my experience. It may not have been so much that I didn't want to work. I didn't possess the skills to maintain a job. Mm-hmm. So I've been in a lot of jobs, in and out. And from an outside perspective, might just look like this guy just doesn't want to work. But I've worked on a lot of things. And I find as I get older, not only do the jobs that I'm at, I stay longer, but the quality of work that I'm doing increases. My respect and appreciation for my work life and the ability to build an income for myself, that also increases too. So that's always what I thought might have been the difference between the general unemployment rate and the youth unemployment rate.
Yeah, maybe. I just read something the other day. I think I found it on LinkedIn. It was basically saying that hustle culture is dead. So that grinding, you're never stopping. Like people are now looking for jobs that are going to pay them what they deserve to be paid, or, you know, that work from home or the flexibility that they need, or like, you know, the inclusiveness that they need. So it's not that they're not working. They're just going to work for the right job that's there to foster their growth personally.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bad employers out there, and a lot of people are just not putting up with it anymore.
Yeah, that is very true.
Which I don't know if that's a bad thing. No. I think it's important to have our standards be set to such a point that we can be happy where we're working. I think people do better work when they're happy to be there, right? I know I do.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we're also seeing that youth are more active in the local labor market and are employed at higher rates than the past. So if these insights show we are active and willing to work as youth, what can attract and retain youth, do we think? Like, what are some supports that youth value in the workplace? And why would these be of value for the employer to consider, particularly if we've heard that youth just don't want to work?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say, I think the idea that youth don't want to work isn't correct. I think kind of like what we were saying, it's just maybe high school isn't the best way to train people to be ready to enter the workforce right away, in addition to societal pressures, of course. I think the most important thing that people are finding, other than wages, like needing a living wage, is they need a healthy work-life balance, and they need their employer to care about them, as opposed to someone who's easily replaceable, like at some of these bigger retailers, right? I think implementing these supports, like ensuring that, you know, doing things like flexible work or job sharing or working from home, they're all really important because these are things that the new generation of workers are valuing. They want more time to be able to spend with their friends and their family.
Yeah, and in places where the work from home situation doesn't work, say the grocery store, for example, I found myself in a lot of produce jobs when I was younger, and I find that the one that was most of value to me, they had a mental health support. So they understand that you're coming to work 9 to 5. They understand that this is where you are more than really anywhere else. And not only is there an option for staff mental health support, but they would come up to you and ask you if you're okay. And I think that's really valuable because there's a huge burnout rate. People do overwork themselves, and it's sometimes really hard, like I said, especially as youth, as we're growing, to really kind of juggle all these pressures and still maintain something. Yeah, so just that help for when you break down if you have to be there every day.
Yeah, I think the mental health thing is a huge thing, or even just having a supervisor that recognizes that you're at that burnout stage. So I had a job within healthcare, and I managed a team of nurses, and I worked the later shift, and I would come in and there would be so much work that the day shift hadn't gotten around to doing, and I would just sit there and I would cry because I'm managing all these areas and I'm getting yelled at on the phone all the time. And then I would go to my supervisors and be like, this didn't get done, this didn't get done. And they'd be like, oh, okay, well, sorry, but, you know, she's got higher seniority than you. There's nothing we can do about it. And I would be drowning and I wouldn't know what to do. And then we had a new supervisor come in. And I remember it was like her second shift there, and I'm bawling my eyes out to her about how I just can't do this and I just want to go home. And I was working late that night. And she literally just said, I'll answer the phones for you. And it was like the nicest thing that anyone had ever said to me. Just even that I don't have to deal with this. Like I can get caught up on my day and then I can start was huge.
Yeah, I think with the job market right now, like we said, there's people that are just not taking those bad employers anymore. So to hear that a place is like that, I think that that's a value. And as I asked, what are some supports that like attract and retain youth? Attraction and retention is a really big issue. But I think just being cared as for a person, as a youth, I can say it's very important for me.
Absolutely, yeah. Like just being treated with respect and acknowledging that you're a person too with a complex life who might be having some difficulties sometimes.
Yeah, or just feeling that your seniority doesn't actually matter at the end of the day. Like someone who's been at that company 30 years isn't going to like, oh, it's okay, she's just higher up in seniority. Like actually feeling like I wasn't just there to do the grunt work kind of thing was like a really nice, like a little treat to myself, like a Starbucks.
Yeah, so that the work that you're doing actually feels meaningful and not like you're picking up the scraps of everybody else who's doing the meaningful work.
And then, I was just batting cleanup kind of.
So why do we think that that would be of value to look at things like that? I'm sure there's many other supports that we could list, but why would any of these be of value for the employer to consider?
Well, I just like you're fostering growth. You're showing your employees who are probably, this could be their first big boy, big girl kind of job. Like this is their first entry into the labor force, and just showing that you actually care. If I had an employer that came up to me and said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you've gone through something, how can I help? I'd be much more likely to stay. I'm not going to get burnt out or frustrated with that job, and there'd have to be another really good job to make me to leave, or a really good opportunity to make me to leave. Whereas feeling like, what does it matter if I leave? It's not like they're gonna stop at all.
Yeah, I used to be an assistant manager at a pretty large retailer, and one of the things that, I tooting my own horn here a little bit, but I'd get a lot of feedback from my staff that, they really appreciated that I would check in with them and stuff. And it seems like such a basic thing to do to make sure your staff are doing okay. If people are happy, they're going to want to do better work for you, right? They're not going to get burnt out if you're respecting them and making them feel appreciated. That's always been the most important thing for me. Any job that I've had where they've had me feel less than appreciated, I've started looking for others. Like, why should I slave away while they don't appreciate the work I'm doing?
Yeah, and then that creates one of the most major issues right now is attraction and retention. How do employers get people to become employees, but then how do we get them to stay? Make them feel valued, care that they are a person, and make them feel like they're doing meaningful work, not just brushed aside.
And it's more than just saying we're an inclusive workspace and all that. You actually have to put the effort in past the orientation and past that probation period. Once you get them trained, you don't just throw them to the wolves, be like, well, have at her. Like, you need that check-in.
Absolutely.
All right, so on the topic of work, I guess we've been talking about work the whole time, but why don't we talk a little bit about where we are in our workplace? Like I said in the beginning, we're all from a youth employment program, and we all work for Workforce Collective, but let's talk just a little bit about what program we're in and how we're navigating through it and what kind of benefits it's bringing to us. What do we like about it? Just stuff like that.
Sure. So I started working with Civic Connect through the Youth Skills Studio about a year and a half ago. I was a system administrator there. It was a completely new experience for me to be able to go into such a technical field, because I don't have any formal training in computer programming or anything like that. It's just kind of been something I've been interested in through my teenager to adult life. And it was really awesome to be given that opportunity to learn those skills and be supported while I'm learning them. They paid for me to take university classes, which was nice. So yeah, I was able to expand my skill set a lot there. And then coming to Workforce Collective now, it's honestly, I'm not being paid to say this, they're the best employer I've worked for. It's such an incredible work-life balance here. Like, we have the 4-day work week, right? Being able to even take like a half day off some days, like if I have a doctor's appointment or something, it's just so refreshing.
I agree. When I first started at Workforce Collective, I got sick and I said, I still want to come in anyway. I care about my job. And they're like, the way it goes here is if you're sick, rest and recover and come back when you're well. And I was so scared. I was like, this shows like you're not really caring about the job. And it was so refreshing to have a change of view there.
Yeah, just to have them not be upset with you for being sick. That seems like such a given, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of workplaces aren't like that.
Well, for me, I come from NAPAM. It's the Niagara Peninsula Aboriginal Area Management Board. They deal with the youth employment and education training for Aboriginal youth. And the program I'm in is called Youth Work Experience. And it helps to connect youth with career opportunities that kind of match what they're going for in life. And it gives you a better experience to put on your resume. And it's to help develop the career skills that you may already be developing. So for me, myself, I'm a photographer, and I'd like to expand into another division of photography and videography. And through this program, I was able to get a videographer position with an organization that when I put this on my resume, it will help me. It will help me advance with the next places that I go. And I appreciate this because working for Workforce Collective and the things that I am part of, I've never felt like I'm doing such meaningful work in my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's doing one thing, developing my career skills, but it's also doing another, developing the way I look at myself. I build my work ethic because I'm happy to come to work. And I see that I've been given opportunities by people that believe I could do great things. And so I start to believe I could do great things. And I think these opportunities for youth are really, really valuable.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, so I also come from Youth Skills Studio. I started in September of 2022, and I got to be a copywriter, which was really cool. I got to work on a project that was my first time, really, where I got to actually kind of see my stuff come to life, which was really, really cool. That first time where my name's kind of attached to it. So I'm beyond grateful for Civic Connect, and I'm super happy that they introduced me to Workforce Collective, and this has been one of the best places, like everyone else has said, that I've ever worked. They've been super, super kind. One of the first projects they gave me kind of a rough timeline, but then I had a question, so I wasn't able to get it done. And I didn't get a slap on the wrist. I didn't get anything. They're all like, oh, I'm so sorry we didn't show you that. Let me show you how to do that. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's so cool. And then I remember trying to Google my problem. And then Thalia was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I didn't show you how to do that. And she jumped right in and showed it to me. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
You didn't get in trouble.
Yeah, I just not being a mind reader, and it was really, really fun.
Another difference between the workplace culture at Workforce Collective compared to some of the other places I've worked, or really the majority of, or all other places I've worked, we really work on output-driven workflow, if that's how you say it. Yeah. I think this benefits me because it really allows me to be a person, and my life matters, and I can also work around that. So I personally think that when your motivation is the hours that you're there, maybe the work might lack. But if the motivation is the quality of work that you put in, then
you're way more driven to see it be done well.
That's what you're getting paid for, is the quality of work that you're putting in, not the hours that you're there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have hours that we put in every week, but it's about the work that we actually put out.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a little bit of a night owl. So I don't really get a whole lot done, 9 to 5 hours, but 5 onwards, I am just a machine and things are getting done, and then not having that constraints of where I have to be in the office from this time and trying to make myself go and trying to make myself think. And then now just being able to be like, okay, it's going to get done tonight. I know it's going to get done tonight, but it's not going to get done till 1 in the morning. And I'm not sending a Teams message at 1 a.m. or something like that. It's just been really, really nice the way that it works for me and how I work better. Everyone's so open and welcoming, and I can adjust as need be to whatever's going on in my life. And it's really, really cool.
And I think the way that they work with us at Workforce Collective to see where we work best, it helps you to get to understand yourself too, where you're more productive and where you're less productive, and little adjustments that you can make. I like that.
I mean, look what we're doing right now. We're recording a pod. Yeah. Never saw myself doing that when I signed the contract, but here we are.
Me neither, but I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I guess I can't make fun of everyone else who does a podcast now.
So last question is, we had an increase in youth moving to Niagara, but the past few years that rate has decreased. What factors might be causing this decrease?
Personally, I think that one of the biggest factors is just the prohibitive cost of living in Niagara. It's really expensive to live here. The cost of living, the data shows roughly around $20 an hour, and the minimum wage is $14.50 or $14.35 or something. So especially for those entry-level positions, it's hard as a youth employee to want to move to Niagara when you're going to have to live with 5 other people in a 2-bedroom apartment, which is a big deterrent. Rent and food prices are at an all-time high. It's an interesting place we live in now.
So for me, I grew up outside of Niagara, and then I moved down here, and obviously I'm still here. So I think one thing with Niagara, especially now that I'm starting to kind of job hunt a little bit again, is if I don't want to work at Great Wolf Lodge or the casino or one of the hotels down in that area, there's not a whole lot else. Like once you filter out the tourism industry or like serving kind of jobs, there's not a whole lot of professional jobs out and about here, really, that I found. I don't know if maybe I'm just looking in the wrong spot.
But that could be part of the problem too, right? Not knowing where to look.
Yeah. And Niagara on its own, it feels very isolated, which I don't know if some people notice or not. It does
feel like the rest of the province considers us.
Like I told my husband that I was going to start looking for a job in Toronto, and he kind of looked at me like, ew. And I was like, well, there's more opportunities there and stuff. And it just didn't even cross his mind. Like, why would we look elsewhere outside of Niagara? But I've already done my serving. I'm very much done working for Tim.
Yeah, I've noticed when I got my first apartment, I'm 27 now. I was 19 then, or 18 then. I think it was like 8 years ago I got my first place. And I got a 2-bedroom apartment downtown Niagara Falls for $700.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Exactly. So I used to know a lot of people that were like, I moved to Niagara because it was so cheap to live here. But now I pay for a 1-bedroom apartment and I pay $1,300. And not downtown either. And downtown apartments are like 2,000 something.
Easy.
So that's why my family moved here, is because it was cheap. And now it's being comparable to other places. And I didn't know that like the food increase was an actual thing going on, but I noticed it. I was wondering if I'm just buying more expensive foods, because I think I'm buying everything I used to, but my bill is so much higher.
Yeah, when we started noticing it, my husband and I, we'd be leaving the grocery store and it'd be like, hey, we either have to stop eating vegetables or meat. Like, we can't afford both, and we're just going to have to learn how to live off Pop-Tarts, because I don't know how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Like, even my first apartment, when I moved down here, it was in Welland. It was a basement apartment, and I had 2 or 3 other roommates. So I literally just paid for my room, and that was it. And it was $5.50 a month or something like that.
Yeah, there was a similar experience. I was looking before I moved to Edmonton. When I was like 18 years old, I was looking for just a little apartment for myself, just to move out of my parents, have some independence. And the apartment I looked at, this would have been like 10 years ago, was like $400 a month for a little bachelor apartment, but it was completely by myself, all utilities and stuff. $400 a month.
It's a dream.
Isn't it?
You can find a bachelor for like $9.50 now.
Yeah, but then you got to pay like your utility. Oh, and plus parking if you need that. That's a new thing too.
I lived on St. Paul. There is no parking space. You have to park in the garage. That's $100 a month plus special event parking.
Oh my
which
gosh.
You don't even have to be going to the event. You're paying for it anyway.
That's brutal.
And it's like every couple days, every few days.
And you have to drive in Niagara. Things are far away.
Things are too far away. Our public transportation is
not the best.
Next to useless.
Yeah, and because we have such a low density area, if you look at places like Toronto and stuff, like people pay a lot for Toronto, but all my family except my siblings and my mom, they all live in Toronto. Most of them find it's like a good compromise, the high price, because of everything that they live around.
Yeah, you don't need a car in Toronto.
Yeah. Like my parents
take the train, right?
My parents have never driven because they grew up in Toronto. And it was like, why would I? Where am I going to park? Why am I going to get stuck in traffic? And there's so much around you.
It is. Even when I go to the city, I've never once driven in Toronto. I just drive to the outskirts, like Kipling Station. And then it's so much easier just to take the train. And it's like about the same time, like when you factor in all the times you're sitting at lights or stuck in traffic or anything like that, it's easier and cheaper just to take the subway into the city.
Yeah, that could be why. But that's the end of our podcast, guys.
Solid discount.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being here and for the discussion.
Thank you so much.
It's a great time. Yeah, thanks for having us.
And thank you to everyone listening. If you'd like to learn more about our work surrounding youth employment, visit our website at workforcecollective.ca, where you can find the section under our current work tab. And we invite you to follow us on our journey through Twitter and LinkedIn, and stay tuned for more episodes of the Workforce Collective podcast. You can find us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and most places you get your podcast content. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.